There is a strange moment in every human life when the outer world begins to feel unfair. You look around and ask yourself why some people seem to move through life as if invisible doors are opening for them, while others fight endlessly for every small result. One person enters a room and is noticed without trying. Another works hard to be seen and still feels invisible. One person seems to attract opportunity, support, love, money, and recognition almost naturally. Another tries every strategy, follows every rule, does everything they were told to do, and still feels as if life keeps resisting them. At first, it looks like luck. It looks like destiny. It looks like some people were chosen and others were forgotten. But what if the difference is not outside at all? What if the difference is not in the economy, not in other people, not in timing, not in karma, not in talent, not in personality, and not even in effort? What if the difference is hidden in something much deeper? Something so close to you that you almost never notice it. Something that silently shapes the people you attract, the opportunities you recognize, the conflicts you repeat, the money you allow, the love you receive, and the version of life you believe is possible for you. This hidden force is what we can call the mirror principle. The mirror principle says this: your reality does not only reflect what you want, it reflects who you believe you are. Not who you pretend to be, not who you say you are, not who you wish others could see, not the version of you that writes affirmations, makes plans, posts inspiring words, or imagines a better future for a few minutes before returning to the same inner state. Reality reflects the image you are unconsciously projecting from within. It reflects your deepest identity, your hidden assumptions, your emotional expectations, your unconscious loyalty to old pain, your invisible agreement with what you think you deserve. And until that inner image changes, the outer reflection continues repeating itself. This is why many people spend years trying to change their lives and still end up in the same emotional place. They change jobs, but carry the same fear. They change relationships, but carry the same wound. They change cities, but carry the same identity. They change routines, but carry the same unconscious expectation. They change strategies, but not the self that is using the strategy. And then they wonder why the reflection keeps returning. Carl Jung understood that human beings do not live only in the external world. We live inside images. We live inside symbols. We live inside unconscious patterns. We live inside stories we inherited, accepted, repeated, and eventually mistook for reality. A person does not simply see the world. They see the world through the structure of their psyche. If your psyche is organized around rejection, you will find rejection everywhere. If your psyche is organized around scarcity, you will see lack even when possibility is present. If your psyche is organized around fear, even a new opportunity can feel like a threat. If your psyche is organized around shame, love may arrive and still feel unsafe. If your psyche is organized around failure, success may appear and you may unconsciously sabotage it because it does not match the image you carry of yourself. This is the disturbing truth. Most people are not rejected by life. They are hypnotized by an inner image that keeps recreating the same reflection. And because they do not know this, they attack the mirror. They try to force the outside to change. They demand different treatment. They chase different circumstances. They wait for other people to validate them. They work harder, push harder, explain more, control more, compare more. But the mirror cannot change first. A mirror can only reflect what stands before it. If you stand in front of a mirror with a wounded image of yourself, the mirror will not show you confidence. If you stand in front of the mirror believing you are always abandoned, the world will seem full of signs that abandonment is coming. If you stand in front of the mirror believing money is hard, people are unsafe, love never lasts, and opportunities are for other people, life will seem to confirm those beliefs with painful precision. Not because the universe hates you, not because you are cursed, not because something is wrong with your soul, but because the unconscious always seeks confirmation of what it believes is true. This is why changing your reality is not only about changing your thoughts. It is deeper than positive thinking. It is deeper than motivation. It is deeper than repeating affirmations while your body still expects loss. The real work is changing the one who stands before the mirror. This is the part most people avoid, because it is easier to blame the reflection than to question the self-image that. It is easier to say, people never support me, than to ask, why do I keep expecting not to be supported? It is easier to say, money never stays, than to ask, what part of me still identifies with struggle? It is easier to say, I always attract the wrong people, than to ask, what unconscious pattern in me recognizes chaos as familiar? It is easier to say, life is against me, than to ask, what inner image am I projecting that makes life appear this way? The mirror principle is not about blaming yourself. It is about returning power to where it truly belongs. Blame keeps you weak. Responsibility wakes you up. Blame says, this is happening to me, and I have no power. Responsibility says, something in my inner world is participating in this pattern, and if I become conscious, I can change it. This is the beginning of freedom. Jung called the process of becoming whole individuation. Individuation is not pretending to be positive. It is not creating a fake identity. It is not denying pain, poverty, trauma, disappointment, or difficulty. It is the deep and often uncomfortable journey of becoming conscious of the unconscious forces that have been directing your life. It is discovering that the outer world is not separate from your inner world. It is seeing that your reactions, projections, fears, desires, wounds, and identities are constantly shaping how you experience reality. And once you see this, you can no longer live as a passive victim of circumstances. You begin to realize that the world you are fighting may be reflecting a part of you that is asking to be transformed. This does not mean every external problem is your fault. It does not mean injustice is imaginary. It does not mean pain is not real. It does not mean other people have no responsibility. But it does mean that your inner state determines how you interpret, attract, repeat, resist, or transform what happens to you. Two people can experience the same event and enter two different realities. One person loses a job and says, this proves I am a failure. Another loses a job and says, something in my life is asking for a new level. One person is rejected and says, I am not worthy of love. Another is rejected and says, this is showing me where I still abandon myself. One person faces delay and says, nothing ever works for me. Another faces delay and says, my roots are still growing. The event may be similar. The reflection is different because the inner image is different. This is why reality is not only what happens. Reality is what happens through you, through your beliefs, through your nervous system, through your identity, through the unconscious meaning you give to life. And this is where the mirror becomes powerful. Because if reality is reflecting an inner image, then the question changes. You no longer ask only, how do I change my circumstances? You ask, who must I become so that different circumstances can recognize me? You no longer ask only, how do I get more? You ask, who is the version of me that naturally carries more? You no longer ask only, how do I attract better relationships? You ask, what part of me still feels at home in relationships that hurt me? You no longer ask only, how do I become successful? You ask, what identity inside me still fears being visible, powerful, or responsible? This is the true beginning of transformation. Not changing the reflection, changing the one who is being reflected. Most people want new results while remaining loyal to an old self. They want abundance while still identifying with scarcity. They want love while still expecting betrayal. They want peace while still feeding drama. They want confidence while still rehearsing shame. They want recognition while still hiding behind the persona. They want a new reality while still projecting the same inner image. And then they feel confused when nothing changes. But the mirror is innocent. The mirror is not resisting you. The mirror is not punishing you. The mirror is simply faithful. It reflects what you repeatedly project. And this is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it means you can no longer pretend your inner world does not matter. Liberating because it means you are not trapped forever inside the reflection you see today. If the reflection can be created unconsciously, it can be recreated consciously. If an old identity shaped your present life, a new identity can begin shaping your future. If the unconscious has been projecting limitation, consciousness can begin projecting possibility. But this requires discipline. It requires honesty. It requires patience. And above all, it requires that you stop trying to decorate the reflection and begin transforming the source. Imagine standing in front of a mirror and seeing a tired, fearful, defeated face. You do not like what you see, so you reach the mirror and try to smooth the reflection. You touch the glass. You try to change the image directly, but nothing happens. You become frustrated. You press harder. You complain about the mirror. You blame the lighting. You blame the room. You blame the glass. But the mirror remains the same. Why? Because the image in the mirror is not the source. It is the effect. The source is the one standing before it. This is how most people live. They try to change effects without touching causes. They try to change income without changing their relationship to worth. They try to change love without changing their fear of intimacy. They try to change visibility without changing their shame. They try to change opportunities without changing their expectation of rejection. They try to change life without changing the inner image life is reflecting. And so they remain exhausted. The mirror principle invites you to stop fighting the glass. Turn inward. Ask what image is being projected. Ask what identity keeps being repeated. Ask what belief has become so familiar that you no longer call a belief. You simply call it reality. This is where the real work begins. Because the most dangerous beliefs are not the ones you argue about. They are the ones you never question. The belief that life is hard. The belief that people always leave. The belief that money disappears. The belief that you are too late. The belief that you are not chosen. The belief that nothing good lasts. The belief that you must struggle to deserve. The belief that being seen is unsafe. The belief that your desires are unrealistic. The belief that your past defines your future. These beliefs become the invisible face you present to the mirror. And reality faithfully reflects them back. Sometimes through people. Sometimes through missed opportunities. Sometimes through repeated emotional patterns. Sometimes through the same conflict in a new form. Sometimes through self-sabotage that looks like bad luck. This is why awareness is the first act of creation. Before you can project a new image, you must see the old one. You must catch the unconscious identity in motion. You must notice when you say, "This always happens to me." You must notice when you expect disappointment before anything has happened. You must notice when you shrink around people who remind you of your old inferiority. You must notice when success begins to approach and you suddenly feel anxious. You must notice when love becomes available and your nervous system looks for danger. You must notice when your mouth says, "I want change," but your body says, "The familiar pain feels safer." This noticing is not small. It is the doorway, because what remains unconscious becomes fate. But what becomes conscious becomes choice. And once you have choice, the mirror begins to change. Not instantly, not magically, not always dramatically, but steadily, because you're no longer projecting from sleep. You are beginning to project from awareness. This is the first movement of the mirror principle. You must stop identifying with the reflection. You are not your current circumstances. You are not your bank account. You are not your relationship history. You are not your old failures. You are not the way people treated you. You are not the version of yourself created by fear. You are the one standing before the mirror, the one capable of changing the image, the one capable of becoming conscious, the one capable of withdrawing projections, integrating the shadow, and living from a deeper center. This does not mean you deny the reflection. You observe it. You learn from it. You ask what it is showing you, but you do not worship it. You do not bow to it as final truth. You do not say, "Because this is what I see now, this is who I am." That is the trap. The reflection is information, not identity. Your current reality shows what has been projected, repeated, believed, tolerated, feared, or expected until now. But it does not have the authority to define what you can become next. So if your life does not look the way you want it to look, do not rush to hate it. Study it. Your life is speaking. Your patterns are speaking. Your results are speaking. Your relationships are speaking. Your emotional reactions are speaking. They're not speaking to condemn you. They're speaking to reveal the image that has been operating beneath the surface. And once you see the image, you can begin to change it. This is where many people fail. They see the reflection, feel ashamed, and turn away. But shame keeps the old image alive. You must look with courage, not with self-hatred, not with victimhood, not with denial, with consciousness. You must say, this is a reflection of an old state. It is not my final identity. This is what my unconscious has been projecting. Now I choose to become. Is the mirror showing me where I must change? That sentence alone can shift your relationship with life. Because the moment you stop seeing reality as an enemy and begin seeing it as a mirror, everything becomes instruction. Delay becomes instruction. Rejection becomes instruction. Conflict becomes instruction. Scarcity becomes instruction. Fear becomes instruction. Even repeated pain becomes instruction. Not because pain is good, but because pain often points to the place where the unconscious is still in control. And where consciousness enters, transformation begins. So the question is not, why is life doing this to me? The deeper question is, what part of me is life trying to make conscious? That is the question that opens the kingdom within. Now, once you understand the mirror principle, you must learn how to work with it. Because knowing that reality reflects your inner image is not enough. You must learn how to project consciously. Most people project by accident. They wake up and immediately look at the old reflection. They check their problems. They remember their limitations. They repeat their familiar emotions. They react to the same people. They speak the same words. They expect the same disappointments. And then they wonder why the same life continues. But a conscious person does something different. A conscious person does not let the current reflection define the next projection. They do not say, because I'm struggling now, I must be someone who struggles. They do not say, because I have been rejected, I must be someone who is rejected. They do not say, because my past looked this way, my future must obey it. They interrupt the loop. They stand before the mirror and choose a new inner image before the outer world confirms it. This is the first secret of a mirror. ##1. The art of conscious projection ***. Conscious projection means you stop allowing circumstances to tell you who you are. You choose the identity first. Then you allow reality to reorganize around that identity through action, perception, and repetition. This is not fantasy. Fantasy says, I will imagine a new life while remaining the same person. Conscious projection says, I will become the kind of person for whom this new life is natural. That is a major difference. The unconscious person asks, what do I want to have? The conscious person asks, who must I become? The unconscious person wants the reflection first. The conscious person changes the source. The unconscious person says, when life changes, then I will feel different. The conscious person says, when I become different, life will have to meet me differently. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. And it begins with a simple but powerful question. Who would I be if I no longer used my current reality as proof of my identity? Sit with that question. Do not answer quickly. Who would you be if your bank account was not allowed to define your worth? Who would you be if your past relationships were not allowed to define your capacity to love? Who would you be if your failures were not allowed to define your intelligence? Who would you be if your wounds were not allowed to define your future? Who would you be if the old reflection no longer had permission to name you? That person is not a fantasy. That person is an inner possibility waiting for loyalty. But to activate that possibility, you must stop rehearsing the old self. You cannot wake up every morning, repeat the same identity, complain about the same limitations, expect the same pain, and then ask why the mirror does not change. The mirror responds to what is repeated. Not once, not occasionally. Repeated. Your repeated self-talk. Your repeated emotional state. Your repeated expectations. Your repeated posture. Your repeated choices. Your repeated interpretation of events. This repetition becomes projection, and projection becomes reflection. So if you want a new reflection, you must choose a new repeated identity. Not a fake identity, not a forced personality, a deeper identity, one that feels more true than your fear. For example, instead of saying, "I am unlucky," you begin to live as someone who notices opportunity. Instead of saying, "I am always rejected," you begin to live as someone who no longer abandons themselves for approval. Instead of saying, "Money is hard," you begin to live as someone learning to hold value, make decisions, and receive without shame. Instead of saying, "Nothing changes," you begin to live as someone who changes before evidence appears. This is where the mirror begins to tremble, because the old reflection expects you to obey it. It expects you to look at your current life and become the person your current life suggests you are. But conscious projection breaks that cycle. You become loyal to the inner image before the outer evidence arrives. And this requires, because for a while, there'll be a gap. Your inner identity will change before your outer reflection catches up. And during that gap, the old reality may test you. It may show you the same problem, the same delay, the same fear, the same temptation to quit, the same voice saying, "See, nothing changed." But this is where most people misunderstand transformation. They think if the mirror does not change immediately, the new identity is not working. No. The mirror is simply showing you whether your new identity has roots. Are you becoming, or are you only hoping? Are you embodying, or are you only imagining? Are you committed, or are you only inspired? Are you choosing a new self, or are you negotiating with the old one? Conscious projection is not pretending. It is practice. You practice being the person who no longer bows to the old reflection. You practice responding differently. You practice speaking differently. You practice perceiving differently. You practice choosing differently. You practice returning to the new image again and again until it becomes familiar to your nervous system. At first, it may feel unnatural. That is normal. The old identity has been rehearsed for years. The new one needs repetition. Do not expect a self-image built through decades of fear to disappear after one emotional insight. The psyche changes through awareness and repeated embodiment. This is why the work must be daily, not dramatic. Daily. A new question in the morning. A new response to difficulty. A new refusal to speak the old identity. A new choice when the old pattern calls. A new posture when the old shame appears. A new action when the old fear says, "Stay where you are." This is how you change who stands before the mirror, not by forcing the glass, by becoming a new source. And once the source changes, the reflection must eventually follow. Not always in the way the ego expects, not always at the speed the ego demands, but in ways that are often more precise than you imagined. You begin noticing things you used to miss. You begin making decisions you used to avoid. You begin attracting people who match your new boundaries. You begin feeling repelled by situations that once felt normal. You begin recognizing opportunities because your identity now has room for them. Reality changes because you're no longer meeting it as the same person. This is the real secret. The world may look the same at first, but you're not the same observer. And when the observer changes, the observed world changes meaning. This is why Jungian transformation is so powerful. It does not begin with decorating the persona. It begins with changing the inner relation to the self. The persona asks, "How do I appear?" The self asks, "Who am I becoming?" The persona wants the mirror to admire it. The self wants the mirror to reveal truth. The persona wants a better image. The self wants wholeness. And when you begin living from the self rather than the persona, your projection changes at the root. You're no longer trying to look abundant. You are becoming internally capable of abundance. You're no longer trying to look loved. You're becoming internally available for love. You're no longer trying to look powerful. You are becoming internally responsible for power. This is conscious projection. It is not a trick. It is not manipulation. It is not forcing reality. It is the disciplined art of becoming the inner cause of a new outer reflection. And this is where the second secret becomes essential. Because after you choose a new identity, you must survive the delay between the inner change and the outer evidence. This delay is where most people lose faith. This delay is where the old reflection tries to pull them back. This delay is where the mirror tests whether you truly changed or only became excited for a moment. The second secret is the patience of the gardener. The fourth secret of the mirror is learning how to break the reverse cycle of creation. This is the cycle that keeps most people trapped. They look at their current reality. Then they form an identity based on what they see. Then they project that identity back into the mirror. And then the mirror gives them more of the same. A person sees lack and says, "I am someone who never has enough." Then they think, choose, speak, and act from lack. The mirror reflects more lack. A person sees rejection and says, "I am someone people do not choose." Then they move through life expecting abandonment, reading danger into connection, and protecting themselves before love even has a chance to arrive. The mirror reflects more distance. A person sees failure and says, "I am not capable." Then they hesitate, shrink, delay, and avoid the very actions that would prove a new identity possible. The mirror reflects more limitation. This is the reverse cycle. The reflection creates the identity creates the projection. The projection creates the same reflection. And the person calls it reality. But it is not reality in its purest form. It is a loop. And the only way to break the loop is to stop letting the current reflection name you. You must stop saying, "Because this is what I see, this is who I am." You must begin saying, "This is what I have been projecting, but now I choose a new image." That is the moment everything begins to change. Not because the outside world instantly transforms, but because you stop obeying it as your master. You become the cause again. You become the one standing before the mirror with consciousness. You begin to ask better questions. Not, "Why does this always happen to me?" But what identity keeps creating this pattern? Not, "Why am I stuck?" But what old image am I still loyal to? Not, "When will life change?" But who must I become so that life can meet me differently? These questions return power to the self. And this is where Jung's work becomes so important. Because the self is not the frightened mask you created to survive. The self is not the wounded identity that keeps repeating old pain. The self is not the persona trying to appear successful, loved, spiritual, or strong. The self is the deeper center. The part of you that already knows there is more. The part of you that does not want to decorate the old life, but become whole enough to create a new one. When you live from the persona, you ask the mirror to admire you. When you live from the wound, you ask the mirror to confirm your pain. When you live from the shadow, you ask the mirror to repeat what you refuse to face. But when you live from the self, you ask the mirror to reveal truth. And truth is the beginning of freedom. So breaking the reverse cycle means this. You no longer build your identity from your current circumstances. You build your circumstances from your chosen identity. You do not wait to feel powerful after life changes. You begin acting from inner authority now. You do not wait to feel worthy after someone chooses you. You begin treating yourself as someone who is no longer available for abandonment. You do not wait to feel abundant after money arrives. You begin becoming someone who can hold value, make clear decisions, and stop worshiping scarcity. You do not wait for confidence to appear. You practice the posture, the language, the choices, and the discipline of the person you are becoming. This is not pretending. Pretending is when the outside looks different, but the inside remains the same. Transformation is when the inside changes first, and the outside slowly loses permission to remain the same. And yes, the old reflection may still appear for a while. The old fear may still speak. The old pattern may still knock. The old people may still expect the old version of you. But now you understand the mirror. You do not panic. You do not return sleep. You do not say, nothing changed. You say, the old reflection is still fading, but I'm no longer feeding it. That sentence is powerful because what you stop feeding eventually weakens. What you stop identifying with eventually loses authority. What you stop repeating eventually stops feeling like destiny. And what you begin embodying consistently becomes the new image. This is the exact moment reality begins to move. First inside, then through your perception, then through your choices, then through your habits, then through your relationships, then through your opportunities, and finally, through the visible reflection of your life. This is why the mirror principle is not a theory. It is a discipline. It asks you to stop being hypnotized by what already exists. It asks you to stop using the past as proof. It asks you to stop confusing repetition with truth. It asks you to become conscious of the image you carry. Because if you do not change the image, the mirror cannot change the reflection. If you do not change your inner identity, life will keep meeting the old version of you. If you do not change the one standing before the mirror, reality will continue showing you the same face. But if you change, truly change, not only in words, not only in desire, not only in temporary emotion, but in identity, focus, patience, and daily embodiment, then your reality must begin to reorganize. Maybe slowly at first, maybe subtly, maybe through small signs, a different reaction, a different choice, a different opportunity, a different boundary, a different kind of person entering your life, a door you finally notice, a pattern you finally refuse, a fear that no longer controls you. These are not small things. They're the first signs that the mirror is receiving a new image. So do not ask the mirror to change while you remain the same. Do not ask life to reflect courage while you keep projecting fear. Do not ask for abundance while rehearsing lack as your identity. Do not ask for love while abandoning yourself. Do not ask for freedom while remaining loyal to the prison of the old self. Stand before the mirror differently. Not tomorrow. Now. Choose the image. Practice the identity. Protect your focus. Be patient with the delay. And break the cycle that has kept your future repeating your past. Because the mirror is always listening. It listens to what you believe you are. It listens to what you expect. It listens to what you tolerate. It listens to what you repeat. It listens to the image you carry when no one is watching, and it reflects. So the question is not whether reality is reflecting you. The question is, what version of you is it reflecting? If this message reached something deep in you, do not let it become just another idea. Take one honest look at your life and ask, what reflection am I tired of seeing? Then ask the deeper question, what image in me keeps creating it? That is where your transformation begins. Subscribe to The Kingdom Within for more deep reflections on Carl Jung, shadow work, the unconscious mind, and inner transformation. Your outer world is not separate from your inner world. Your life is a mirror, and when you change the one standing before it, the reflection can no longer remain the same. Final closing. Change the one standing before the mirror. The mirror is always responding, not only to what you say you want, not only to the goals you write down, not only to the version of yourself you show to the world, but to the image you carry when no one is watching. It responds to the identity you repeat in silence. It responds to the beliefs you protect unconsciously. It responds to the fears you keep calling reality. It responds to the old wounds you still obey. And this is why real change begins in the invisible. Before your life changes, the image inside you must change. Before the outer world reflects something new, the inner world must stop projecting the same old self. Before a different reality can meet you, you must stop standing before the mirror as the person who keeps expecting the past to continue. This is not about pretending your problems do not exist. It is not about denying pain. It is not about forcing yourself to smile while something inside you is still afraid. It is about becoming conscious, because what remains unconscious repeats. What remains unconscious becomes a pattern. What remains unconscious feels like fate. But the moment you see it, the pattern begins to lose power. The moment you realize, this is not life punishing me. This is an old image being reflected back to me. You begin to wake up. And when you wake up, you stop fighting only the reflection. You stop asking the mirror to change while you continue projecting the same fear, the same shame, the same scarcity, the same wound, the same identity. You return to the source. You ask, who am I being? What image am I carrying? What do I secretly believe I deserve? What story about myself am I still repeating? What part of my shadow keeps choosing the familiar pain? What part of my persona is trying to look changed instead of truly changing? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are powerful because every honest question brings the unconscious closer to the light. And the more conscious you become, the less your life is ruled by automatic patterns. You begin to notice the moment you are about to repeat the old self. You notice the moment you are about to speak scarcity. You notice the moment you are about to expect rejection. You notice the moment you are about to shrink. You notice the moment you are about to choose what hurts simply because it feels familiar. And in that moment, you have a choice. That choice is where a new reality begins. Not in a dramatic miracle, not in a sudden escape, but in the quiet second when you refuse to project the old image again. You respond differently. You speak differently. You stand differently. You choose differently. You stop feeding the reflection you are tired of seeing. And slowly, the mirror begins to receive a new signal. At first, it may appear as a small shift, a different thought, a calmer reaction, a stronger boundary, a new opportunity, a person who meets you differently, a door you would not have noticed before, a pattern you finally refuse to repeat. These small signs matter. They are the first evidence that the one standing before the mirror is no longer the same. So do not underestimate the invisible work. Do not underestimate the power of changing your inner image. Do not underestimate the moment you stop identifying with what happened and begin identifying with who you are becoming. Your reality is not separate from your consciousness. Your outer life is constantly speaking to your inner life. And if you listen carefully, every reflection can become a teacher. The delay can teach you patience. The rejection can reveal where you still abandon yourself. The scarcity can show where you still fear receiving. The conflict can reveal what your shadow has not integrated. The repeated pattern can show you the image you're still projecting. Nothing is wasted when you're conscious. Everything becomes material for transformation. This is the deeper meaning of the mirror principle. Reality is not only something you endure, it is something you enter into relationship with. It shows you where you are free. It shows you where you are asleep. It shows you where the persona is performing. It shows you where the shadow is still hidden. It shows you where the self is calling you back to wholeness. And the more you answer that call, the more your reflection begins to change. Not because you force life, but because you stop being the same person inside life. That is the secret. Do not try to change the mirror. Change the one standing before it. Do not try to force the reflection. Transform the image that is being reflected. Do not ask reality to become different while you remain loyal to the old identity. Become different. Become conscious. Become whole. And the mirror will have no choice but to show you something new. So today, ask yourself, what reflection am I tired of seeing? And what part of me keeps projecting it? Sit with that question. Write it down. Do not answer from the surface. Let it reach the part of you that already knows the truth. Because the moment you stop blaming the mirror, you begin reclaiming your power. And the moment you reclaim your power, the old reflection begins to lose authority. If this message spoke to something deep in you, subscribe to the Kingdom Within for more reflections on Carl Jung, shadow work, the unconscious mind, and inner transformation. Your outer world is not separate from your inner world. Your life is a mirror, and when you change the one standing before it, the reflection can no longer remain the same.